Every man must come. The queen's voice thundered through the royal courtyard, echoing against the palace walls. Her golden bracelets rattled as she lifted her staff high, her face hard as stone. Messengers ran to every corner of the kingdom, calling the farmers, the hunters, the fishermen, the traders, every man, young and old, to gather at the palace gates. The villagers murmured in shock. Why would the queen call all the men at once? What does she want with us? Wives clutched their husbands' arms, refusing to let them go. Mothers wept as their sons hurried to obey the queen's summons. Even the elders who could barely walk leaned on their sticks and hobbled forward, for no one could disobey the queen's command. By sunset, the palace courtyard was packed. Hundreds of men stood shoulder to shoulder, sweat shining on their foreheads, fear glimmering in their eyes. Some carried hoes, others bows, others bare hands. They whispered among themselves, wondering if war had been declared, if punishment awaited them, or if a sacrifice was to be made. At the top of the palace steps, the queen appeared, her tall crown glistening in the last rays of the sun. She looked down upon the sea of men, her gaze sharp and searching. Then, she pointed her staff directly at them. "Tonight," she said slowly, her voice slicing through the silence like a blade, "I will reveal a secret that has been hidden for many years. One of you has betrayed this kingdom. And until I find him, none of you shall live." A heavy silence fell. Men gasped. The women watching from the walls wailed. The queen's guards shut the gates with a loud boom. No one could escape. And just as the queen's words settled into their hearts like hot coal, a sudden cry came from deep within the crowd. Someone had collapsed. Many years before that day, the land of Nsaya had been a kingdom of peace and plenty. The soil was rich, the rivers wide, and the hunters always returned with heavy game. At the center of it all stood the great palace, where Queen Adisa ruled after her husband, the king, passed away unexpectedly. Queen Adisa was wise and beautiful, with skin dark as night and eyes that pierced like lightning. She was loved by many, but also feared, because she never smiled without reason and never forgave easily. Her word was law, and her silence was heavier than stone. At first, the people thought her rule would bring joy. But soon, strange things began to happen in the land. The river that never dried suddenly shrank, leaving the fishermen pulling empty nets. Crops that once grew tall and strong withered in the sun even when the rains came. Hunters returned from the forest with nothing but scratches and empty quivers. And worst of all, children fell sick with fevers the healers could not cure. The people grew restless. They whispered in corners, "Something is wrong in the palace. Perhaps the gods are angry. Perhaps someone has committed a great sin." But no one dared say it aloud, for fear of the queen's wrath. Amma, a young maiden who worked in the palace kitchen, noticed the queen's strange behavior. At night, when everyone slept, she would hear the queen pacing in her chamber, muttering to herself. Sometimes, Amma swore she heard the queen weeping softly, though she never showed tears in the day. One evening, while sweeping the courtyard, Amma overheard two guards whispering. "The queen knows the truth," one said. "What truth?" the other asked. "That there is a traitor among the men of the kingdom. Someone who caused the king's death. She has been searching quietly, but now she plans to uncover him before all." Amma's broom slipped from her hands. Her heart pounded. A traitor among their men. Could that be why the land was cursed? Days passed, and the queen's face grew darker with each sunrise. Finally, she ordered her messengers to spread the strange command, "Every man must come to the palace." The village erupted in confusion. "Does she mean all men?" cried a farmer. "Even the boys?" asked another. "Yes," the messenger replied firmly. "From the youngest to the oldest. Not one shall be left behind." Mothers wept, fearing for their children. Wives tried to hold their husbands back. But the queen's word was final. So they came. Farmers left their hoes in the fields, fishermen abandoned their nets, hunters returned from the forest with half-chased prey. Even the old men leaning on sticks shuffled forward. The palace courtyard filled until there was no space to move. The women and children crowded the palace walls, watching with wide eyes, whispering prayers. At last, the queen appeared, tall and fierce, her golden crown catching the dying light of the sun. She raised her staff, and silence fell. "Men of Nsire," she said, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the air. "You have lived with me as your queen since the king passed. But tonight, I tell you this, his death was no accident. He was betrayed by someone among you." Gasps and shouts rose from the crowd, but the queen lifted her hand, and silence returned. "For years I have searched, but the gods have spoken to me. The traitor is here, standing among you. Tonight, the truth will come out." The gate slammed shut. And just then, from the middle of the crowd, a man let out a loud groan and fell to the ground. His body shook as if seized by spirits, and foam gathered at his mouth. The men around him stumbled back in horror, shouting, "Witchcraft! Witchcraft!" The queen's eyes narrowed as she descended the palace steps, her staff glowing in the fading light. All eyes turned to the fallen man, whose lips began to move as if he wanted to speak. But what secret was about to be revealed? The man's body shook violently, dust rising around him as his limbs thrashed against the earth. His eyes rolled back, his lips moved without sound. The men nearby tried to drag him up, but their hands burned as if touched by fire. They leapt back, terrified. The queen walked closer, her steps calm, her eyes locked on the man as if she had known all along that this moment would come. She raised her staff and struck it against the ground. The sound boomed like thunder, silencing the screams. "Speak," she commanded. The man's body stiffened. His lips trembled, and then, with a voice that was not entirely his own, he cried, "It was me." The crowd gasped. "I poisoned the king's wine." His words ripped through the silence. "I thought I would gain power. But since that day, the gods have cursed me. My harvest rot, my children cough blood, my goats fall dead in the field. Forgive me, O queen, forgive me." Men stepped back, shaking their heads in disbelief. Some spat on the ground, others covered their faces with their hands. Wives in the crowd wailed, crying for the shame that had befallen their people. The queen's face was unreadable, but her eyes blazed like fire. She raised her staff again and shouted, "Now you see why I called every man of the village. The gods demanded truth. The traitor has been revealed." The guards seized the man, dragging him forward. He screamed and struggled, but he was too weak, too broken. The crowd erupted with shouts, some calling for mercy, others demanding his death. Amma, the young maiden who walked in the palace, watched from the edge of the courtyard. Her heart beat fast. Never had she seen such power in the queen's hands. Yet something in her heart whispered that this was not the whole story. The queen lifted her staff again, and the crowd fell silent. "You have all seen it with your own eyes," she declared. "This man betrayed the king. But let it be known, the gods revealed him because of his own guilt. And should any of you hide such evil in your hearts, the same fate will find you." The man wailed as the guards dragged him toward the dungeon. His voice cracked as he cried, "Mercy! Mercy! Spare me, queen!" But the queen turned her face away. The crowd murmured, fear spreading like a shadow. Wives clutched their husbands tighter, mothers held their sons closer. Men glanced at one another, wondering what secrets each carried in his chest. Then the queen raised her voice once more. "The kingdom of Nsire will not fall to betrayal. Let this day be remembered forever. The truth cannot be hidden, not from me, and not from the gods." The people bowed low, their faces pressed to the ground. The queen stood tall, her crown glinting in the torchlight, her eyes like storms that could not be tamed. Yet as the gates opened and the crowd slowly poured out, Oma noticed the queen linger by herself at the steps of the palace. For a moment, when no one else was watching, her shoulders sank. Her fierce mask slipped, and sorrow crossed her face. Oma's breath caught. Why does she look so sad? Then, in a voice too soft for anyone else to hear, the queen whispered to herself, "One has been revealed, but the true enemy still hides." Oma froze. The hairs on her neck stood on end. Did that mean there was another traitor? Someone else among the men, or perhaps even closer? The queen lifted her head again, her mask of strength returning as the last of the villagers disappeared into the night. The drums of the palace beat loud and strong, but Oma could not shake the words she had overheard. The kingdom believed the danger was over. But Oma now knew the truth. This was only the beginning.